Welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Stories, where we get to interview authors from all over the world. One of the blessings of my job is I get to meet entrepreneurs and people who have the entrepreneur mentality. It's wild. I've worked with many physicians who either are becoming more entrepreneurial or have over the past couple of years, starting to write books, create courses, help individuals get into real estate. It's pretty fascinating to see. And I think that's why this book is very relevant for anybody listening out there who is in that world. The book is called Digital Health Entrepreneurship, Health Informatics. And the author is Arlen Meyers. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start off with the genesis of the book. Why did you write Digital Health Entrepreneurship, which I really do believe is a great title? So why did you write it?
Well, like any entrepreneur, I thought it filled an unmet need. And to go back into the story, are you with me? You're frozen.
No, I'm good. I'm listening. Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me. All right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought it filled an unmet need. The short story is that I'm a academic surgeon. I'm an ear, nose, and throat facial plastic surgeon. My first career was at the University of Colorado, and I did that for many, many years. And to make a long story short, I wound up going through multiple career transitions and do what I do now, which is educate people about healthcare innovation and entrepreneurship. I consult, advise, work with companies, primarily in digital health, but all in healthcare. And I'm a co-founder and president and CEO of something called the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs. So my world now is about teaching people how to get ideas to patients. And I thought that this book filled a need.
I love it, man. Where are you located at?
I'm in Denver,
Got it.
Colorado.
Got it. And so did you always have this entrepreneur mentality? Because I believe for the average person who thinks of a doctor, a physician, an ear, nose, and throat specialist, they're not technically entrepreneurs. They're more maybe employees of a health community, right? That's the way that I looked at it. So now I've seen them in a different light. But did you have this inside of you your whole life, you think?
I think so, but I didn't know it. I call those folks innerpreneurs. In other words, they have the thing, but they just don't know it. And particularly when it comes to doctors, there's this myth that doctors are lousy business people, which is absolutely positively untrue. And part of the reason that myth persists is because doctors actually believe it. And there's a number of reasons why they believe it, but the main reason is they're not taught it, that they don't think it's part of medicine. It's not why they got accepted to medical school. It wasn't in their career track. You had to do a lot of stuff to get into school that had nothing to do with business. In fact, business was discouraged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think about 1% of the roughly 1 million active clinicians in the United States, doctors, have an entrepreneurial mindset. It's actually a very, very small group of people. But things are changing. Medical education is changing. The world has changed. COVID, people's purposes, their ambitions. So more and more health professionals, and I refer to, we're talking about doctors, but this could be anybody. It could be a pharmacist, a nurse, a doctor, allied health professional, whatever. There are many, many reasons why people are getting interested in entrepreneurship other than their clinical job. So to answer your question, I wrote it because I thought there wasn't anything out there. I didn't know it when I started all this stuff, and I didn't want people to go through the same thing I did.
In your opening of your book, you talk about the recent trends that are happening. I'm just going to list off a few here. And you talk about how technologies are, being applied to medicine, right? There's policy and regulatory changes. Bigger companies are getting involved, right? Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. But one thing that I find in my world is that the rise of physician entrepreneurs. Now, after meeting them, they say it's like somebody showing them a pathway they didn't know existed, right? And because of the rising debt and maybe certain levels of constant working, there's a lot of burnout within the world. But the moment they have multiple revenue streams or a business on the side, they can actually free up their time and have less burnout. So there's something going on in the world that I'm seeing. Do you notice any type of trend? Is it based off of debt? Is it based off of just, you know, constant
Yeah,
overworking?
it's well, it's all of the above. I say that people, physicians, doctors, pursue physician entrepreneurship for two reasons. One is because they have to, and two is because they want to. A lot of physicians have to because they go through life, divorce, disease, disability. Some of them lose their license. People leave a home country where they've had years and years of medical experience, wind up in the United States and they can't practice medicine. Disability. So there's a whole list of stuff that happens that prevents you from actually being a clinician, but you got all this background and experience of being a doctor and you want to apply it. So that's the have to. The want to are people who, frankly, just don't want to see 20 or 30 patients a day for their entire professional career. I talk to medical students, I talk to residents, I teach people in graduate programs, and I taught 100 medical students a couple of weeks ago. At the beginning of the talk, I said, how many of you when you graduate, first year med students, how many of you when you graduate, now this is 8 years from now, 4 years of med school, 4 years of residency, how many of you just want to see patients as in your clinical career? 15%. So 85% want to do something different. And that's what we're talking about. We're giving them the opportunities. And frankly, even if you don't stop practicing clinical medicine and you do something else, I think it just makes you a better doctor. So either way, you're either going to help yourself or you're going to help your patients, because I think entrepreneurship and having an entrepreneurial mindset makes you a better doctor.
Oh, 100%. And I think that what you just said really hits home with my current client. He says he became a better doctor whenever he didn't need to work anymore. It's fascinating. It was a great phrase, a way of putting it. When he became financially free through real estate and his other services that he offered, he actually liked going in to work 2 or 3 days a week on his own schedule, if you will.
Right. Well, there's two attitudes I find with people who have a lot of money, who are professionals, particularly doctors. One is, I have so much money that I don't really need to worry about making any more money. And therefore, I can really enjoy what I do essentially for free, which is being a doctor. That's what I signed up for. That's what I wanted to do. And a bunch of stuff happened that since I signed up, it's not what I signed up for. So I just want to go back to taking care of folks and being happy, because happy doctors make happy patients. And incidentally, grumpy, unhappy doctors make dangerous doctors. They make bad decisions. They commit surgical errors. It's been shown over and over again. If you're unhappy and burned out, you make more medical errors. So it's not a good idea to keep doing this for the sake of the patient, if nothing else. So you really sort of have to get your head into this and do something to make you happy, or stop seeing patients because it's dangerous. The second reason that people with a lot of money, so one folks with money say, this is great, I don't need to make any more money, I can do what I want. The second group of patients, or of people with a lot of money, are the direct opposite. They want to make more money because that's how they keep score. And to them, it's a kick. And you can argue with people like, how much money do you really, it's the psychology of money. And some people just see money as a way to keep score. They see it as financial security. They see it as independence. And the more of it, the better. So who am I to say what you do with it?
In your book, I think it's chapter 2, you talk about real challenges in digital health entrepreneurship. Number 1 or number 2 is changing the human behavior. When you're talking about digital health, it's using Zoom. It's having online meetings, right? This was tough 15 years ago. It is becoming part of our day-to-day life. So this is opening the door for individuals with your mindset.
Well, digital health, simplistically, the definition is the application of information and communications technologies to exchange medical information. The information can be educational, it can be informative, it could be therapeutic, it could be diagnostic, it could be a Zoom call. taking care of somebody remotely on a virtual Zoom. So that's what it is. Now, it's been around for a very, very long time, digital health. Actually, the first patent for digital health was in 1924. So we're talking about 100 years of what people have referred to as digital health.
Didn't know that.
And it was only COVID that led to its rapid dissemination and implementation for all the reasons that we know about. So here we are, 100 years later, talking about digital health. But the problem is that it's one of many ways to add user-defined value through the deployment of innovation, which is really the goal of entrepreneurship. The problem is education does not change behavior. And to me, the holy grail of everything that we're doing in sick care, and we don't have a healthcare system, we have a sick care system of systems, low quality, high cost, inequitable access, poor outcomes, terrible experience, et cetera, a lot of waste, et cetera, et cetera. So the goal is to transform sick care to healthcare. We're presently spending $4.5 trillion with a T on US healthcare, sick care spend, and 96% of it is taking care of sick people. It's not preventing illness. It's not public health. It's not public health infrastructure. We're just taking care of sick people, and we're not doing a very good job of it. But the goal is to transform it. And that's one of the reasons we created the society, is to educate and inform and inspire people to innovate, to transform sick care to healthcare.
Ooh.
So the problem, though, is that doesn't happen. The holy grail is changing doctor and patient behavior. It does me, as your doctor, absolutely no good to tell you to do XYZ or give you information about XYZ, your disease or your symptom, if you don't do anything about it. If you're overweight and you keep eating lousy food, there's nothing I can do. It doesn't help you if you don't stop eating lousy food. So we can disseminate all the information we want. We can talk till the cows come home. And the same, but unless we change behavior, same applies to doctors. Doctors do things they shouldn't do. They don't do things they should do. Why? Well, they're not stupid. I mean, they're just trying to do the best they can. But there are all kinds of issues that get in the way of behavior change. And I don't need to tell anybody listening to this, when was the last time you tried to change somebody's behavior and were successful at it?
Oh, can't do it.
Exactly. It's not that you can't. It's not that no one has ever done it. The point is, it's hard. And it takes a lot between the digital call and you're changing your behavior. Until or unless we do that, we're going to continue to spend, it's actually anticipated, we're going to spend $6 trillion in 5 years.
Oh, well, the phrase goes a long way. You know, when the student is ready, the master will appear. I truly believe you will not listen to me unless you're ready, right? That's the way I look at it. I was not ready until I was 22 years old and I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Before then, I wasn't even thinking about wealth and financial success and all that. I thought I was just going to follow the system and the system would take care of me, which is absolutely wrong.
Right. So it's this issue of how do you get from awareness to intention to decision to action? And the same applies to entrepreneurs. So most doctors do not have an entrepreneurial mindset. However, mindsets can be changed. So how do you change someone's mindset? You know, Socrates way back when said, you know, I can't teach anybody anything. I can only get them to think. That's all I can do. I can tell my story. I can tell them a million tales. I can't change somebody's mind. I can't tell somebody to do something. But something happens. And typically what happens is that you make it personal, but you don't take it personally. I'm talking about when you become a physician entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, and it actually happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, something personal happens to you, to a member of your family, or some life event that just says, wait a minute, I just can't put up with this, and I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to fixing it. I don't care whether it's a child with an incurable disease, or you have a lousy experience with a sick care system, or you suffer something that nobody seems to figure out, so you're going to try to figure it out. So you make it personal. But there's about a 96% failure rate for physician entrepreneurs. I don't care what you do, drugs, devices, diagnostics, digital health, care delivery, fintech, you name it. The odds are you're going to fail over 90% of the time. So you don't take it personally. You pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you try over again. And the ultimate test is the number of times you will succeed is directly related to the number of shots you take on goal.
Speaking my language.
So
Socrates,
if you don't take the shots, you're not going to succeed. And actually, there was a guy who was a soccer statistician who questioned that assumption. And actually, it's true. It doesn't make any difference what kind of shot you take, where you take it from, who took it, because you've seen all these ricochets and weird bounces and stupid stuff happen. You just have to take the shot. If you don't, it's never going to go in the goal.
Damn right. Yeah, it's the Gretzky quote, famous Gretzky quote. And
Right.
yeah, I truly believe that, you know, it does fall in line with Robert Kiyosaki says that 4 out of 5 businesses will fail. So you need a foolproof plan, create 5 businesses. That's it, right? You just have to never give up. And
Right.
so to just touch on it, and we could probably speak on it for hours, but you talk about how it's the sick care system, not the healthcare system. And I truly believe in that.
Right.
And 2020 really woke me up to how real that is. So where does that come from? Is it simply because of the regulation, all the red tape, all the nonsense, or is it simply because of what Rockefeller did and created the incentives of the pharmaceutical world and started to create all kinds of bad energy around natural therapies and all that? So where does it come from, and what would you say how that started?
Well, to answer your question directly, I believe that so we have in the United States, we have a sick care system that is a business, and it's a very large business. It's 20% of the US GDP. Now, why is it that the United States wound up with a sick care system that's a business, and a lot of other advanced economic countries have other systems? For example, universal coverage. Now, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds and all this, but if you look at Germany and France and England and Australia and Canada, all these other places, at least they have universal coverage. Now, that doesn't mean universal payer. It doesn't mean a lot of stuff. But the point is, it tends to be more socialized, unquote. In other words, lots of folks pay for other folks to get the benefit. That doesn't happen in the United States. Why? I believe that the healthcare or sick care system that a country gets is a reflection of its values. So if you look at the United States, way back when, and what is it about the United States that typifies the American character? Lots of stuff. Some would say ugly clothes and they're loud, but I'm talking about this system, which is we're very suspicious of centralized government.
Yep.
We praise individuality and the myth of the meritocracy. We think everybody should be able to take care of themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Other countries have a very different social attitude, and consequently, the United States has a very weak social support system because we have that ethos and those values. Now, that translates into we're going to make this a business. Now, the history of that, again, goes back 100 years. There's an article that's titled The 100 Years Sick Care or Healthcare Wars. The first attempt to de-democratize sick care in the United States was actually Teddy Roosevelt during the Progressive era in 1912. So we're talking over 100 years of healthcare policy reform.
Yep.
And we're pretty much, now, are we any different than we were 100 years ago? Yeah, we're not covered wagons. The doctor's not showing up. You don't pay him with a chicken, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of stuff has happened, but it actually has made, and then the highlights are corporatization of medicine, vertical and horizontal consolidation, an emphasis, some would say, on profits, not patients, and lots of technology that, for all intents and purposes, I have the thing that there is no Moore's law in healthcare. you come up with an MR machine that doesn't replace the CT machine. That didn't replace the X-ray. That didn't replace the ultrasound. They just got all bundled together and added on to each other, which added more cost. So that's part of the way this, and there's so many stakeholders feeding at the trough that it's really hard to change the system when you dangle $4.5 trillion in front of them.
100%. You talk about the creation of the AMA and how Rockefeller was a part of that. And it's pretty scary once you kind of retrace the steps of how it all came to be. I have one more thought on it, and it does have to do with the government wanting a sick country. If you are sick, if you are dependent on a drug, you can be controlled. That's how I look at it. And maybe there is some truth to that. Maybe there's not. But I believe that there is some people pulling the strings that say, hey, if we can get you to be hooked on X, Y, and Z, we can control you to some extent.
So that gets to the payment mechanism, and that gets to fee for service versus value based. And that gets to, okay, how do we change this? Because at the end of the day, nobody's happy. So how do we accept the people making all the money? So how do we change this thing? And there's a lot to this, but I would say the primary thing is you have to change the rules. Because and I mean legislation, I mean oversight, I mean payment mechanisms, I mean intellectual property, it's reg affairs, it's a whole string of stuff that translates into how do we make and pay for what we create. So particularly at this time in American history and in the election cycle, it's very important to vote because the rules will directly impact you. Now, I'm not taking one side and the other in this podcast, God forbid. But what I am saying is, at the least, you know, this is going to have a really big impact. So the rules create ecosystems. Ecosystems facilitate the development or inhibit the development of business models. Business models facilitate or inhibit innovation. So you keep the end in mind and you back into it. So the only way we're going to be able to fix this thing is to change the rules. Now, little by little, we are, but we're a long way from home.
So in your book, you talk about the hype of blockchain and AI. I have really not thought too far into how much the blockchain is going to affect the health world, but I know AI will certainly change it. I get scared of individuals looking for answers and being directed on purpose to go the wrong way when it comes to their health. Case in point, this is an individual who works on my team. She's like, I always have headaches, and my doctor prescribes this, 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 and my psychiatrist prescribes this, 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 and this. And I'm like, well, what are you eating? And she shows me it's constant freaking sugary drinks, and she's eating a shit ton of salt. And I say, you know what? It probably has to do with your sugar intake or your salt. My doctor never told me that, or my psychiatrist never told me that. And I'm thinking to myself, take that times 100, put it on Google or AI, and individuals be directed the wrong way. So is that what you fear? AI, how does the AI world adjustment going to impact the health world, but also how does the blockchain affect it?
Well, as far as AI, I mean, again, this is a long conversation, but the highlight is, in my view, and many others, I think AI is transforming how we do things in medicine. Typically, the applications are in three basic areas: operations, finance, and clinical decision-making. So the clinical decision-making part, clinical decision support, augmented doctors, all the, Oculus, all that stuff, that is the most difficult to penetrate and get doctors to use because they don't trust it. And the patients don't trust it, and the health executives don't trust it, statistically. So the main factor and the thing that's getting in the way of dissemination and implementation of AI in healthcare is trust. Now, if you look at operations, that is robotic process automation, repetitive activities that really just sort of, you're making a car with robots. You're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Those kinds of things are helpful. and are cutting waste. They're improving efficiency. And those are the things that are getting traction. And then when it comes to finance, in terms of revenue cycle management, billing, prior authorization, generating letters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that also is getting some traction. So there's a much bigger, existential question about, is AI going to be another nuclear bomb or not? But that's beyond the scope of this conversation. So at the end of the day, I think artificial intelligence has a way to go. It's very, very young, and I think it's going to take.
However, did you hear some of the things he was saying? Pretty fascinating, right? How much it's going to disrupt the health world. Never really thought about the robotic side of it, right? Not many people trust in it yet, but they will. And I think if the more people who see the power of that, it's going to become part of human evolution, where robotics are going to be helping out sick more and more. So I think there's a lot of good there. The AI side, the information side, right? You can control information. The more you control information, the more you control people. I think that's the scariest part. So robotic side, I'm not too worried about, except for the fact maybe we're running into Terminator 2 days. That could happen, right? T-800 turning on its people, maybe. But when it comes to certain robots right now, what I'm seeing, I don't know how much that's going to impact the world in the next 5 years, because I think they've already had it. It just didn't look like a human being. Now they're starting to look like human beings. Slowly but surely, it's going to impact, obviously, the economy, right? People are going to lose their jobs to robots. I have a client that has a robot burger joint, right? That's pretty amazing stuff. Now, will that change the health world, though? I don't know. People will become lazier. People are going to be doing less and less and less as a people, giving individuals who take control of their mind, their body, and their spirit a total advantage, who become independently wealthy, who create online businesses, right? Who take care of their health, who become less reliant on the system, on the pharmaceuticals out there. It's going to give us an advantage for sure. But will robots really impact the health world? I don't know. I really don't know how that's going to be. I think individuals become lazier as as the byproduct. So hopefully we can get Arlen back, because there's a couple questions I want to ask him. We lost him. I think he burned out of his phone potentially, because it just clipped out. Like it just went like gone. So hopefully he comes back on. We can continue this. But anyway, fascinating stuff, man. How about that though? How about Arlen? What a good guy. I didn't know if I would agree with everything he's saying. Number one, he's an entrepreneur at heart. But number two, he realizes that the whole system is completely screwed up. It's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system. People are profiting off of individuals being sick, right? There's an incentive for it. It makes so much sense. We have a doctor saying that. And man, oh man, I love hearing that, because it just shows there's a lot of good guys out there trying to disrupt what's going on. So I'd love to have him back on. And if not, we'll probably have to continue this another day. But wow, that was a shock. I sometimes get on these podcasts, guys, and I get a little bit nervous because you just don't know if it's going to be combative or not. Because some things they say you go against, and you always wonder if, like, all right, I'm going to say whatever I truly believe. I hope they take it the right way, because a lot of these people don't know who I am, right? They haven't been listening to me. They know a little bit about me, but I'm the one reaching out to them because they have books on Amazon, and I'm curious about them. So for them to come on and really not have too much of an understanding of what we do and how we do it, I speak my mind at all times. So you just never know what you're going to get. And it seems like this person, Arlen Meyers, great guy, is on the same page. He knows the history. And it looks like Arlen lost his internet. So we're going to have to redo this another day. But wow, that was fascinating. Arlen Meyers. Guys, if you want to check it out, his book is Digital Health Entrepreneurship. Health Informatics. Look him up. We're probably going to have him back on at another time. Fascinating. Great conversation. I don't want to just... Here he is right now.
I lost my
That's all right. We'll continue this another day. How about that? Because that was amazing. That'll be part one of maybe part of a 2-part series. How about that?
Sounds good. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, I'm just gonna wrap this up. We'll put this out there anyways. And man, that was so interesting. And I was just telling people because it's still being recorded that sometimes I get on a podcast with some people and I don't know where they stand. But wow, number one, you have the entrepreneur mindset, but number two, you do realize that it's a sick care system. I always say that stuff. So wow, fascinating. I'd love to have you back on though, Arlen.
That's a good part, kid.
Okay, good deal. I'll send you another link. Let's reschedule for either next month or whatever. Okay. Thanks, Arlen. Bye-bye. So this will be a 2-part series, guys. We could get into this for hours. Part 1 is concluding right now. Digital health entrepreneurship, health informatics. Stay tuned for part 2 because Arlen Meyers, great guy, knows his stuff, knows about the health industry. One of the most leading experts, I guess, in this world that I've had on this podcast. Can't wait for part 2. Remember, guys, $1 million book will lead to $1 million life. Right on.